Hey everyone, Nathan Nerdarchy here from Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. Today I'm going to be talking about the cult of personality. Also, it's as a player tip about playing different personalities, especially difficult ones. And with me I have...
Ted.
Dave.
So I had this idea, I don't know if I got inspired by people's comments about playing personalities or just kind of how you see sometimes where somebody's playing this kind of off-color character that kind of grates or is abrasive to the other players or the other players' characters. And I see more of an issue coming about when you have them being abrasive to the other players, even though they're thinking like, oh, I'm playing my character. And how my thing is like, well, for players tips, how to play a character that's not just like, oh yeah, I'll go with whatever the team says, with, you know, playing against that type without butting heads all the time and actually getting people to be like, I don't like that guy out of game because of all his annoying characters he plays.
There's a couple things that come up here when we talk about this. Number one, you know, you're going to have players that come to the table, and regardless of what mechanical stuff is on a character sheet, they're going to sound like themselves, and they're going to generally act very similar to themselves. And then you're going to have other people who are far more role-playing intensive, and they're going to develop a character around, like a persona, you know, around this character. And they may or may not use voices depending upon their individual abilities, but they're going to come to the table, and when they sit down, okay, well, I'm now, you know, Uzengar, the, you know, dwarven fighter wizard, or, you know, whatnot. And you can have that player dealing with this, and they're going to act differently. They're going to possibly sound differently, and that's going to come across. So when you have people who are acting and reacting based on what's going on, it's going to change the dynamics at the table if somebody doesn't understand that, oh, this is a character versus this is, you know, Dave.
Yeah, did Ted just insult me, or did Ted just insult my character? Or did Ted's character just insult my character?
And that's, so what we're really talking about is portraying difficult personalities at the table, right, as a role-playing situation.
Yes.
So, again, like you said, you know, are people going to be able to differentiate between, you know, this is my character talk, this is this person's character talking to my character, instead of, no, this is this player talking to me. But even still, it can get old quick, too. Like, if, you know, some of the examples we were talking about earlier, where, you know, a character that interrupts people a lot. Like, at that point, at a certain point, it's not really going to matter if it's character to character or person to character, person to person. It's just going to be annoying no matter how you do it, if it's something that's done over and over again. So I guess the real conundrum here is, how do you play negative character traits without having a negative effect at the table?
Yeah, without getting negative
you know, I can sum up the answer to that question with one word: limitations. My character for your game that we played online, you know, the Trouble with the Prospectors, was, you know, this gnome illusionist, and, you know, he talked really quickly. He occasionally would interrupt people, and he was a little bit over the top.
I think I know where you're going with this. Less is more.
Yes. Like, I could have sat there and tried to usurp the entire, you know, game time that you had established to pretty much shove down the players that we were gaming with down their throat that this is what a gnome is and this is how I'm choosing to play it. But I don't think anyone would have had as much fun. I had fun. I exuded what I felt. You know, I exuded enough of what I felt was this character. You know, when a role-playing situation came up, I tried to make sure that I got my dues, as well as, you know, stepped back a little bit and allowed other people to do stuff. But my character still came through. I still felt that, you know, his quirks and issues that would fit into that troubling personality was visible enough, but didn't overshadow everything, didn't take over the game, and didn't directly insult any of the other players.
So there's like a couple ways that people game, online and offline now, right? So, like, if you exhibit too much of this negative trait stuff, you know, online people will stop playing with you.
Yes.
Absolutely. offline in real life at home games, you may get punched in the face. So,
or at least threatened bodily harm.
yeah. So like, you know, you definitely got to live by the don't be a dick rule.
Yes,
and it goes a long way. So, you know, and like you said, if you do it a little bit, then you're amusing the players at the table, and they're probably going to enjoy that interaction. But if you do it a lot, it'll get old fast, you know, especially over the course of 4, 5, 6 hours, however long you're playing your game. You know, so so Ted just gave some examples. What do you got for me, Nate? This was your concept,
All right.
your baby, your brainchild.
Well, I was thinking, like Ted said, limitations. I think if you've got, you say, all right, I've got an abrasive personality. Well, how am I abrasive? Do I talk fast and cut people off because I feel like they're not talking fast enough for the conversation to go? Do I try and finish people's sentences? Things of that nature. I'm thinking for the gnome. Like we're trying to think, oh yeah, that gnome would totally do this and do this and do this. So I would say a big deal is, you know, have a list of 10 things, and I'm annoying list, but you're like, oh, I play a character that's full of himself and think I've got the best ideas. So I want to always put those ideas forth. All right. So I might, if I think someone's idea is not so great, I'll cut them off and say, well, this is what I've got. So I might do that once per gaming session where I cut somebody off once in an encounter. And I might have another one where I might just be talking with 2 people, or I see, oh, like Ted and Dave's characters are interacting over in the woods. And I'm like, well, I'm going to talk to that ranger anyway. So I'm going to go over right now, even though he's talking to somebody, and interrupt the conversation. Not a big deal. And in fact, when I leave and have said my thing, you guys will probably role play based off of me interrupting him. But like, what is up with that guy? Or like, he saw me talking to you, right? Like, you know, so conversation will evolve out of that. And
Was that guy raised by wolves?
And then you'll get back to your thing, but it'll impress upon you as the players that that's the type of character I'm playing, without overly annoying you all the time.
Yeah, as long as, again, you know, you set forth those limitations and say, okay, well, you know, you don't have to come up with, well, I can only do this 3 times a night, or I can only do this, you know, once during a specific encounter. But just be aware that, you know, gauge your table. So
I feel like I'd set it at some kind of number limit just for myself, and say like, well, I think I could be a little more annoying, or I can be a little more abrasive to hit it home.
I think it's something that you know, if you feel out the table and see like how they're reacting to what you're doing, you know, if they're like, oh man, this character is a hoot, well, then you might be able to step it up. If they're like, dude, can you knock it off? You can dial it down. So it's something that might be fluid based off of the NPC that you're interacting with, or the specific player at the table you're interacting with, and you can wind up having, you know, a different set of reactions.
I think a big part of that too is like picking and choosing your moments. So like you try and pick the moments that are most impactful.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's
depending on what's going on at your game table. So like the archetype character that comes to mind for me with this type of character is like the Kender. And how people can, you know, people will play that character type to the nth degree of annoying.
Turn it up to 11 on annoyance.
Yeah. So it's like, you know, so one of the things about Kenders is their curiosity, and they always ask questions. Well, you know, I can totally see someone just being obnoxious with always ask questions.
Not to hate on Kenders or the people that play them, but
I hate them. I hate them all.
But there's been 3 times I've had 3 bad experiences with players playing Kenders, and they just wanted to play an annoying ass character that I wanted to punch in the face.
It feels like that sometimes. That's the
and I'm just like, did you? Sadly, it was my only experience playing with those people for the most part. So I was just like, I wonder if they always play annoying characters.
They probably do. Now I've only played with like maybe 1 or 2 Kenders, and honestly, the Kender that I played with in the very first one, at least I'm positive of, is the player just loved that character from the series, Dragonlance series. That was their favorite character. So they wanted to play a Kender, you know, and there's, you know, there's ways of doing it that aren't obnoxious. Like, especially if you read the Dragonlance series and you read more than one kind of books with more than one Kender in it, then, you know, you would see that there's different personalities and different ways for them to be portrayed. You know, the Kaz the Minotaur series also had a Kender in it. And I think Kaz would usually threaten violence on his Kender companion, and that would quiet him up. Because like the Minotaur fist is like it's the size of his head, so it could be influential.
Yeah, it's like you talk about you're picking your moments, and again going back to my gnome in your game, when you put up here's this talking or singing mushroom, I'm like, this is totally up this guy.
This is my gnome soulmate.
He's like, this is amazing. And like I'm ready to totally just usurp this this scene, and I had a blast with it. So like you have to wait for those moments. You have to find like, okay, well, I know the things that I am going to potentially do are irritating or annoying. So how can I limit those things and get the maximum advantage or exposure to this type of ability?
Thankfully, I remembered what I was going to say. I was panicked and thinking we were going to end the video without me remembering this. All right, really important thing.
And with that,
no. Now I want to say with that. Major thing is when you play an annoying character, make sure he gets his dues. And by that I mean, make sure he screws something up that could have been beneficial for him, but because of his bad character trait, he gets the stick instead of the carrot.
Metagame the other way.
Well, whether it's a tavern lady or what have you, or there's someone he's trying to impress, and he just puts his foot in his mouth, said as I so he messes up something. Not you as a character, like, this is what he would do. I mean, you as a person are like, well, this is what he's going to do, and I know it's going to mess up, but that's okay because I chose to play this type of character. So it's like the curiosity kills the Kender kind of thing. Oh, what's in this box? Why don't you come see?
Sphere of Annihilation. You're dead.
So there's things that'll get a Kender in trouble. There's things that will get an abrasive personality. Well, maybe you just decided to interrupt the conversation with one of the nobles, and you didn't know he was a noble, or maybe you didn't care because that's the way you are. But the noble cares.
Not only that, too, then it creates this moment in time that you can then use as character growth for your character in the future. Maybe after that experience, he tones it down because he learned a lesson.
Yeah, that could also be that he starts to change his way, especially if he spends a week in jail due to insulting some noble who had power. So I would say that is important, especially if it's funny, because anytime you can get all the players to think that was humorous, what happened to your guy, especially if they know, it's about knowing. So if all the players and that you're totally screwing your character over by choosing to do this way, but they also agree that it's absolutely what your character would do, then it's just funny.
Then a weekend of waterboarding it is.
It's just funny that happened to the character. And you're like, haha, well, that's what you get, is what everyone else is thinking. It's like, well, that's what I get because that's the character. That's what he would do. So I'd say play to the flaws. Don't overdo it. Definitely have that limitation concept. But in the end, anytime that you can do something that's going to have an impact on your character, either by character development, and maybe he'll change his perspective on things. Maybe he'll be a little less obnoxious, or maybe he won't interrupt anybody anymore. They'll be like, oh, excuse me. It's no worry if I speak with you right now. I have something important to say.
You could actually start it where like he goes to interrupt, steps back, and then
and then says excuse me, and then says something that's completely irrelevant, right? But it's part of the process.
Yeah, it's part of the process. Soon he'll say important things. He'll interrupt conversations.
At this point, he figures he has it to say, so it's important.
Yes, he still has that problem
it takes time,
of self-importance,
and that'll actually show the actual progress and character growth over the course of the game, rather than it just all of a sudden, okay, well, I'm not going to do this anymore.
Yeah, and maybe 5 or 6 of his character traits don't seem as prominent anymore. He rarely does them. But then there's still that maybe he's just overconfident now, or maybe he's only arrogant in the subjects that he's
actually knowledgeable
about. But he's like, well, I'm the most knowledgeable in this. So of course it's okay for me to interrupt. You're saying something wrong.
You're being stupid again.
Yeah, you're being stupid again. But hey, he doesn't say shut up, stupid anymore. It's what he used to say. So that kind of shifting, it allows for character development to be visible to all the players, and also those mistakes really help lighten up the table when you're playing a more abrasive character. They don't come along all the time, but when they do come along,
it'll humanize them.
Yeah, humanize them and try and capitalize on those mistakes.
Nice, I like it. It's good. So what do you guys think? Let us know in the comments below. What is your experience with annoying characters or over the top personalities? While you're at it, like, subscribe, and share.
You can follow us on Twitter.
Also check us out on Nerdarchy.com.
So until next time, stay nerdy.
Getting people to be like, I don't like that guy out of game because of all his annoying characters he plays.
There's a couple things that come up here when we talk about this. Number one, you're going to have players that come to the table, and regardless of what mechanical stuff is on a character sheet, they're going to sound like themselves, and they're going to generally act very similar to.
I have
Ted,
Dave.
So I had this idea. I don't know if I got inspired by people's comments about playing personalities, or just kind of how you see sometimes where somebody's playing this kind of off-color character that kind of grates or is abrasive to the other players or the other players' characters and
themselves. And then you're going to have other people who are far more role-playing intensive, and they're going to develop a character around, like a persona, around this character. And they may or may not use voices depending upon their individual abilities, but they're going to come to the table, and when they sit,
I see more of an issue coming about when you have them being abrasive to the other players, even though they're thinking like, oh, I'm playing my character. And how my thing is like, well, for players tips, how to play a character that's not just like, oh yeah, I'll go with whatever the team says, with playing against that type without butting heads all the time and actually. Hey everyone, Nathan Nerdarchy here from Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. Today I'm going to be talking about the cult of personality. Also, it's as a player tip about playing different personalities, especially difficult ones. And with me